Hear your microphone, please. Downstairs calling.
Okay.
Regarding the microphone. Board members: Friedman.
Here.
Manukian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Quintero.
Here. May we have your report?
Certainly. The agenda for the June 5th, 2012 regular meeting of the Glendale Successor Agency was posted on Thursday, May 31st, 2012 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Before moving on to the agendized item, actually there is no approval of minutes, and the only item would be oral communications, unless there is a agency member or staff comments. I do want to indicate that there is one closed session item. At 2A is a conference with real property negotiators. Property locations at 111 East Wilson Avenue. Negotiations are authorized with Wilson, Maryland Mixed Use, LLC. Agency negotiators attending closed session are Scott Ochoa, Yasmin Beers, Michael J. Garcia, Julian Van Meiden, Hassan Hagani, Philip Lanzafame, and Mark Berry. Instructions to negotiators will concern the price and terms of sale of property. At the conclusion of this portion of the meeting, we will not adjourn, but rather recess to close.
Okay, do you anticipate reporting out?
No, we do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. Next, please.
Next item is oral communication. Save 5-minute rules, and other rules will apply to this as they did to the Housing Authority.
Okay, I have one card. Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon, members of the Successor Agency and city staff. My name is Herbert Milano. Last week, I presented my request to have the financials of the Americana be released. I have yet to go to the city clerk's office in order to obtain those documents. But I would like to explain part of the reason why I have such a strong interest in following up on the Americana project and the referendum that occurred back in 2004. And I think that it will serve perhaps as a bit of history to Mr. Ochoa, since he was not privy to the significant debate that occurred during that time. Part of the reason why I had an objection to the Americana had to do with the way that the city had presented the financial justification for it. Now, last week, Mr. Lanzafame came here before you and said that the real reason for the purpose of the Americana brand or the town center investment was to remove blight. Well, blight is part of the definition or the reason to be for any redevelopment agency. And blight could be referred to as, areas that included perhaps crime or areas that were deficient with regard to its economic opportunity. I had a significant problem with regard to the numbers having to do with how it was justified. As we began to look at the numbers, the city basically stated and quoted in the news, as it was quoted in the news press, that the investment was roughly about $27 million. When we began making more inquiries, the number was increased to around $40 to $50 million. And finally, they settled on 77. $77 million was the amount that the city deemed as the proper way of calculating its investment. Here's the problem. The problem is that when I used the California Public Records Act to figure out how much the city paid historically for each of the parcels, at historical costs, it was $84 million. And that's a historical cost for parcels of land that were purchased in the 1970s. If those parcels of land had been valuated properly in a proper accounting type transaction, we would have been well over $100 million in the subsidy just on the current valuation of the parcels of land that were given to Caruso Affiliated Holdings. When you put parcels of land adjacent to each other, anyone in real estate can tell you that the valuation of those parcels increase in value because you don't have all the setbacks and everything else that goes along with it. In addition to the 2-story ceiling, we basically were allowed to go 65. That additional airspace is a significant additional valuation. So just roughly speaking, we gave about $110, $120 million worth of valuation, yet on the books it shows only a 77. I have a problem with a city not being transparent in its approach. But then part of the calculation of saying, well, Caruso Affiliated Holdings is going to provide a park. We need to basically define what is the objective of a park. Whether when we have a city where the park that is being promoted as being a public benefit is a commercial entity, that it is there primarily to promote the commercial objectives of that entity, it ceases to be a public park devoid of the constraints of having that expectation of a financial return for someone. This is part of the problem of the calculations that generally are presented and the lack of transparency and honesty that the public deserves. Because this way we can say, look, if we provided $120 or $100 million worth of subsidy, then what is the payback? Well, we do the payback with regard to the increases in property taxes and increases in sales taxes that it's going to bring in. Or alternatively, the additional alternatives that the city would have had with that valuation of land that it had acquired and what else it could have obtained for that money. The Americana brand also managed to be able to pull other commercial entities into its perimeter, entities that would have normally been producing sales tax income outside of the Americana. So getting a good, true picture of what the actual contribution is financially is a difficult one, but nonetheless I think it could be done if there were sufficient amount of clarity. The Americana is a done deal. We are committed now to paying the bond debt that we have. We got still about $48 million on one of the major bonds that was used to purchase the parcels of land. But what I was asking for is basically a transparency and honesty to the general public on how a transaction such as this is being presented and voted on. Because then it would allow us to basically assess in the future other types of proposals that the agency may have. Thank you very much.
Okay, next, please. Okay, I have another card. Rick Lemmel.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and City staff. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I won't get into a futile effort to try and re-explain, as we have the last 11 years, the facts that have been sort of disjointed that the former speaker had to say, but I will address some of the issues that I think unfairly besmirched the city in the process that took place for the Americana at Brand. First of all, the land valuations, as anyone with a very basic understanding of real estate knows, would have changed significantly downward based, as was the report from Kaiser Marsden, based upon the encumbrances placed on the land and the limitations placed on the land. Whether it be the park, whether it be a certain level of amenity that the city wanted there, whether it be the management of that park and the fact that it was not to be just a regular everyday park, but a higher level that we were responsible for keeping up, and the expense involved in doing so. So that's one aspect that I think was, as this will play over and over again, that you don't want the public to have the wrong and false impression of because of someone's take. Secondly, I happen to be one of the few people, along with some police officers, some ladies of the evening, and some drug dealers that were walking that property early on when it was blighted. And I don't think that there's any level of transparency that people can understand. It was terribly blighted. Last but not least is further economic impact, not just to that particular area of land, but surrounding it, much like the benefit we all received, or the city received, with the redevelopment when the Galleria came along, and then Galleria 2, and it was very successful, continues to be successful. The economic benefit has also been impacted positively by the long-term commitment, whether it be projects that are done in town or focus on Brand Boulevard to help bring business. And thank the good Lord we're doing these kinds of things, all of us, because with the economy being where it is right now, we'd have serious challenges if we didn't at least have sales tax dollars to help take that edge off a little bit. Last and certainly not least, the Americana at Brand is a destination that has a lot of peripheral benefit, much like the Galleria, that we can't even measure at this point in time. Businesses that come and relocate to Glendale, keeping Glendale residents able to do their business locally. And the other statement was made that the negative economic impact is that the Americana is bringing businesses into the Americana that would not function, or that would function fine outside of the Americana, and so it's sort of trading dollars for Glendale. Not the case at all. In fact, what is going to be history in the fall of 2013 would only have taken place with two entities like the Americana at Brand and the Glendale Galleria, where we're going to be the only city in the United States of America that has a brand new Nordstrom and a brand new Bloomingdale's opening up in our town. So my reason for coming up to speak is I think it's important, if we're really going to talk about transparency, that we level with the public and not just go on and on. So with that, I thank you very much for your time.
Okay, any comments or
Yeah,
next, please?
I have one. Other than Verdugo Park, I think more families with little children use the park in the Americana than any other place in Glendale. You see them all the time down there. They're not out in the other parks. So to say that that isn't people's park, well, that's wrong, because they're sure down there using it all the time.
I mean, what kind of park has shade coverings over the kids and comfortable lounges with a cappuccino cart right next to it so the parents can sip while the kids romp in that
No place in Glendale.
patrolled environment?
Okay, well, I'm not going to get involved in the discussion. But let me say one thing. There was no prostitution in this area, and there was no drug dealing in this area, so let's make that clear. It may have been blighted, and it may be legally blighted, but there was no prostitution or drug dealing. Okay, next, please.
Recess.
Okay, we will recess.
Oh, no, there's well, I do have a comment. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Aside from the
Yeah.
Americana, I think we got a letter from the city manager regarding potentially a joint meeting with the oversight board. Although we're not agendized, I'm not in favor of that. I would be in favor, however, of holding a meeting where we can develop a set of directives from the city council, or well, from the successor agency to the oversight board as to what we expect from them. Clear. I know that the county clearly gives their appointees what they expect. I want to do the same, publicize it, publish it, and let everyone on that board, including yourself and Mr. Lanzafame, know exactly what we, as the successor agency, speaking on behalf of the citizens of Glendale, expect from them when it comes to their list of issues and projects and obligations that they deal with and vote on ultimately as an agendized item. Would anyone support that?
I'll support. Okay, any other comments? All right. We will recess to closed session, the successor agency. I'll now call to order a joint public meeting